great deal of difficulty receiving information from. The transmissions were stopped on several occasions. Once because they were coming too fast, he was overworked. Once because the transmissions were too difficult for him to perceive. The frequency was too high, so they adjusted that. But it finally did get done, and the book has been translated actually into English, but there's no legal precedent here or contract, I might say, for the thing to actually be published. So that may happen in the future sometime. But anyway, I thought I would read you the short foreword from Eduard Albert, and then you would get an idea roughly what's in the book. It says in the foreword, Eduard Albert, mankind of this earth is in a stage of witnessing a step towards a radical change, a new age, that is clearly seen by spiritual people as more significant. Nevertheless, the great mass of humanity is in the abyss of spiritual ignorance and bondage. So it has become necessary to go to the root and give them this message. It is also necessary to lead them towards or forward to a new way on the path of spiritual understanding and harmony in the future. The earthman should open his spiritual senses and recognize the truth. So begins the message from the spirit level of Eduard Albert. There are valuable references to be found in this book on the development of the awareness of life, so that as man begins the Aquarian age, he finds the path of creative justice. That's the foreword in the book. It's roughly a 100-page book. I've read the thing several times. It's a great little book, and it actually contains some really valuable information in the later chapters on practical information on how to experience spiritual growth, how the thoughts of your mind actually work in the universe, how they are, you might say, reflected by the universe, so you can learn to understand what is happening with your thoughts. It's called a boomerang effect, where your thoughts have electrical charges. You create a thought, send it out, and it comes back to you in kind of a reverse polarity form. It's called a boomerang. That's explained in the book. It's a very valuable book with insights into humanity and how we could prepare ourselves for the coming age. In German, you can buy it. It's $25 if you send for that over there. And hopefully maybe someday we'll be able to get the opportunity to actually publish it and sell it here in English so you could read it. Much of the information that's in it, I kind of squeeze into the tapes here and there a little bit. Okay, the next book is called Biotope. I had no idea what a biotope was when I was villing over at Billy's, and I saw this and I said, "What's a biotope?" And they said, "You don't know what a biotope is?" And I said, "No." And she says, "Well, it's a garden patio." I said, "I never heard of that." And she says, "Well, you must, surely. It's the most common word in English." Well, maybe it is to a lot of you, but I was not familiar with the word biotope. I am familiar with patio, but not biotope. So Biotope is a short book. It's on the design, layout, and plans on how to build garden patios within nature. That's just $5. There's also a book called The Book of Names. This is a very interesting book. It includes over 6,000 names in their original form and meaning. Throughout the notes, when we were going through the tapes, you notice I mentioned a couple of times that the ancient Illyrians had pretty much figured out entirely the language of spirit. In other words, the sounds that are made and how the spirit actually interprets those sounds in actual meaning. Well, there's a book of names. And this book of names, you can go through it and you find all of the sounds and so forth, and you can look up the name like Sharon, and you can look it up and see what that name actually means in the old Illyrian language, which is founded, as I said, as best they could on the true meaning of how spirit interprets these sounds. That's $60 for the book of names. There's a book called Directives, and it's in German only. By the way, it says $60 on the list, but I tend to think that's a misprint because it's not that big of a book, and I do not believe that the Book of Names is actually $60. So I think it's a misprint on the list. It's probably only about $15 or $20. There's a book called Directives. It's in German only, and it says $18. These are guidelines, rules of behavior, achieving and keeping one's psychology, physical and conscious, purity, health. This is an attempt by them to write down all the directives for life and how to make kind of maintenance for the psyche, the mind, and consciousness, and so forth. There's another little book called the Decalogue. The Decalogue was translated years ago by a lady here in the United States named Roberta Brooks, who was a very close associate of Billy Meier's, and she was able to translate a book called the Decalogue. the psyche and the meditation. And unfortunately, she had some difficulties with the group over there, not with Billy himself, and there was a falling out, and these books came off of the market, unfortunately. But they're very good books, and she did an excellent job of getting them translated. It's just unfortunate they're no longer on the market. Well, the Decalogue is a book that's devoted to the understanding and explanation of the 10 Commandments, or what's called the 10 Bids. This book was actually transmitted to Billy by another spiritual level called the Patali level. The Patali level is the very highest of spiritual levels. Both it and the Arhat Ather level were very difficult for Billy to perceive. The Patali level was way too high. So it was arranged through the High Council of the Pleiadian worlds that the Patali transmissions would be received by them in meditation. The frequencies then were toned down to where a human could receive them, and Billy was transmitted this information from the Patali level, which explained the original 10 bids or commandments as they originally were in the universe. And there's some explanations in there on how they mildly vary, depending on how the way we've defined them over the past few years. And actually, there's 2 more commandments in there. There's really 12. And so if we find our way to be able to get this book out to you in English sometime, you'll be able to read all of those. You can send for it in German, by the way, and it's just $15 over there. There's also an index of the photos. As many of you know, Billy took hundreds of photos. There's an index to all of the photos for $15. It does not have pictures in it. It has descriptions of each picture, who took it, when and where, and you can buy that, and from that then you can order the photos. There's a book called Life and Death, and it's written by Billy again. It's $25, and it's about the continuation of the spirit inhabiting the human being after the death of the physical body. It's a very interesting book. You might want to get that one. There's one called The Law of Love. It deals with the love and the basis of our existence, the logic of love, its definition and meaning in human life. It's also $15. There is a book called The Meditation, and the meditation is actually like an introduction to the principles of what meditation is. It's an explanation mentally of how to go about performing meditation. You might say exercising it and learning about oneself and developing spiritual powers. It also was translated into English, but it's not available. But in your tape set, there are one tape called The Meditation, which explains as best as possible all the processes that are involved in that. You can order it for $15 in German. There's another book called the Om, O-M. Om means creation. And they refer to it over there as the Book of Books. I'm not sure of the price at this point. It's probably around $125. It's in German. It's 600 pages long, and it is it's a number of things. It's a huge book. It's kind of a rewrite of the Old Testament, for one thing. It contains all the most important laws and commandments according to the laws of creation, rules of order, guiding lines, aims, task of the human being, both in the material and spiritual life. It was compiled together kind of like a mutual thing between Ptah and Billy. And then there's the prophecies. It's $25. It's, of course, prophetical statements and prophecies of coming events on Earth beginning in 1976, some of which I've already gone over with you. In a few I will just kind of write down there in your exhibit on the prophecies. Then there's a book called The Psyche. The Psyche is a very interesting book. It's kind of a handbook for learning to understand your mind, your psyche, and the internal workings of it. It's $15. And then, of course, there are the Semyasi reports or contact notes, which we've just gone over on these past 8 tapes. You can buy those in their German form also, all 1,800 pages of it. And I don't know what the price of those currently is at the moment, or if they even have them all available. So all the books are available in German. Billy's address is listed in your exhibit, so feel free to write and get any of those that you like. And happy reading.